Hi, welcome to Rebuild Academy. We're putting together a series of shorts where we take the best of the best out of each of our main episodes and distill it down into a short episode. In this episode, we're talking to Testa, who is an architect that has specialized in refurbishing buildings into low energy homes. So in this episode, we're talking about maybe why you should consider refurbishing a building rather than actually looking for a completely clean plot of land. And also, what's the difference between achieving passive house on refurbishment compared to on a new build home? So if either of those two subjects are useful, please check out this episode.
Testa, I run a practice called Testa Architecture.
How do you tend to start a retrofit passive house?
Yeah, so a lot of the clients that come to us have already got a house. They've got a home, and they still want to gain those sort of energy, comfort, and sort of health benefits of a passive house, or at least a very well designed, energy efficient home.
Is low energy retrofit popular?
Do at least as much low energy retrofit as we do sort of low energy new build.
Why consider low energy retrofit rather than a typical refurbishment?
I think, well, whilst we're here and we've got this disruption, what else can we do to ensure that our home is comfortable for the long term? And sometimes that's quite incremental. So we'll speak to clients about, well, if you do this now, you can still do that, and you're not kind of missing an opportunity for the future. At other times, we do it everything all at once. So move the clients out of their home, and it's amazing how transformational it can be. I mean, I think it's not all about energy and comfort for us. It has to go. If that's all you're doing, it's probably not best value for money. So we're dealing with more than one problem for the client, hopefully, and giving them a much, much better home to live in.
Is retrofit passive house easier than new build passive house?
It's trickier, which is why there's an ENERFIT standard from Passive House Institute, which slightly less demanding energy performance targets. So rather than 15 kilowatt hours per metre squared per year, it's 25. And then also an air tightness, instead of 0.6 air changes, it's 1. So it's just that little bit less demanding in that regard as well. I would say it's still probably more demanding to achieve a ENERFIT certification than it is to achieve Passive House certification on a new build.
When doing a retrofit, do you need to move out?
The ideal world, somebody does move out of their home for 6 months or whatever, but that's not practical for most people. So can we do this incrementally, or can we choose particular methods that limit the impact on people's lives as they live in the homes?
What is the biggest advantages in doing a retrofit?
It's like the idea of the fact that you're not throwing away all this carbon that's already in that building structure. I mean, one of the other benefits of retrofit, which isn't about working with your own existing home, is that we do often get people come to us and say, well, we'd like to build a new home that's really high performance and really comfortable. We'd like to build it in, let's say, Sheffield, because that's where we are. Can you help us find a plot? And that's a hugely difficult thing, and often you can spend as much on a plot as you would on an existing house anyway, because the value of the homes are in the land really, rather than the house themselves. On a number of occasions, we've said, well, buy an ugly 60s house in an area that you like, and it will become ripe for retrofit and reorganisation and extension. But you've got over the issues of potentially agreeing the principle of building a house on that site with planning, and you've got over the issues of finding a plot, and also a lot of the structural work is already undertaken. So,
do you go all the way to Passive House certification?
We've never actually gone that far because of cost constraints and things for clients. But what we have found is that by using the Passive House methodology, that we're able to have really detailed conversations with our clients about where best to spend their money.
What is the common issue when doing a retrofit?
I think it tends to be conflicts between aspiration and money. I mean, that's always the biggest thing. And retrofit is still an expensive thing to go deep retrofit. So kind of having those early conversations about budget and where best to spend that budget is really, really important.
How do you start pulling together a budget?
So we have an initial benchmarking, which we find really, really useful. So we have a cost calculator on our website, which people can come and have a look at and use. It essentially uses baseline meter squared rates, but then with multipliers, and whether that's to do with if you're building new build on a steep slope, then that's going to have a multiplier that increases your cost. And likewise, if you're doing some basic retrofit work, will have a meter squared cost, but obviously the more work and the deeper you go, so we've got factors for that as well. And we find that as we go through projects that it's a very good indicator. And if people come into the project allowing for those kind of figures plus the professional fees, VAT, etc., which we're very clear and open about when we start a project, yeah, it's a very good guideline. And normally they then have sufficient budget to do a decent job. We still recommend a quantity surveyor.
How do you get a tender price?
I mean, it depends on the kind of procurement we might be using. We might say, well, we're going to go with a contractor who's got experience of this particular kind of work. Let's introduce you to the contractor, and we might use that as our pricing point, and that we can negotiate that or at least work through value engineering with that particular contractor. So a competitive tender isn't going to deliver them. It might deliver them a slightly cheaper cost, but it isn't likely to deliver that with the best quality result. And if they were really to get the same quality result from any contractor, then it's likely to cost about the same. Most contractors cost about the same. Their time, materials, etc. It doesn't really change. So we much prefer that sort of either negotiated route where we work for a reasonable amount of time with the contractor, so they really understand the project, and then they are very comfortable with the price. They know that they've covered everything and there isn't anything that's going to hit them. And likewise, we know that we've ironed out any issues that they might have otherwise picked up partway through the project, and that everybody's got a bit of buy-in, which I think is really useful, rather than, I've given you a price and we've accepted it and we started on site and now I'm going to have a look at the drawings properly, which is what can happen.
What's one of your top tips when designing a low energy home?
Get someone who's actually willing to model the project. Now that might be Passivhaus, it might be another route, but it needs to go beyond best practice and guesswork. It needs to have some numbers attached to it. I think that's the most important thing, because you can make properly value decisions then about what you're going to do, what's important, because you've got the numbers to back that up.
What's the best way to contact you?
I mean, the best thing to do is just visit our website, paultesterarchitecture.co.uk. So Paul Testa Architecture, all one word. We have lots and lots of resources on there. We have advice and a regularly updated blog, and you can sign up to our newsletter. And the cost calculator I mentioned is also accessible on our website.
I hope you found Paul's tips useful. If you did, please make sure you visit webuildacademy.com and check out Paul's page. On there you'll find Paul's full-length episode, as well as a set of show notes and links to Paul's website. In particular, check out his cost calculator as well. That's very useful. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to the We Build Academy podcast. Don't forget to click subscribe and check out our website, webuildacademy.com, for more great tools and information to help you build your dream home.